All right, back in action on Breitbart News Daily. Senator Tom Cotton is with me, Republican from Arkansas. Senator, a ton to get to today. I want to get to your exclusive that we got at Breitbart News about the DREAM Act analysis that you have, which is really important. But I want to start with something which is a little offbeat, but I want to get someone who's really thoughtful on these issues. And you're someone who is one of the rare people in Washington, no offense to your colleagues, that I actually feel like I might learn something from if I ask you a question. And I'm kind of confused by what's going on with the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff. I'm not into Marjorie Taylor Greene. Seems like she said some really nutty stuff, and I don't dig it. But is she really the person who's running the Republican Party? Because I've turned on MSNBC and CNN, and that's kind of what I've heard. I don't totally get it. I imagine you've had to deal with this to some level. Could you talk to us about your thinking here?
Yeah, Alex, thanks for the kind words. Let me start by telling a story. It's a story I told in my book, Sacred Duty. Anyone who's been to Arlington National Cemetery knows that the planes fly over it into Reagan National every couple of minutes. And when I perform funerals there, you might have 10 or 15 planes fly over, always on the same north to south path. But on the morning of 9/11, it was a little different. Soldiers had just finished the 9 a.m. funeral, and they'd hitched their horses to one of the cemetery's hitching posts, and they saw a plane flying a very different path. And they watched it slam into the Pentagon, which is just a couple hundred yards away from the cemetery. That happened, Alex. Islamic terrorists flew that plane into the Pentagon, and they flew planes into Twin Towers. Wasn't a hoax. Wasn't an inside job. Republicans cannot indulge claims that it didn't happen. And just like we shouldn't accept conspiracy theories that mass murders at schools were false flags, or that a Jewish space laser caused wildfires in California, what did that was ill-advised liberal environmental policies. Our party stands with Israel. We stand for the U.S.-Israel alliance, and we shouldn't tolerate anti-Semitic tropes. Now, of course, make no mistakes, plenty of Democrats that do and say outlandish things, too. I mean, Ilhan Omar has made multiple anti-Semitic statements. Maxine Waters urged mobs to attack Trump administration officials. Eric Swalwell cavorted with a Chinese spy. Chuck Schumer threatened 2 Supreme Court justices if they didn't rule the way he wanted. I don't see MSNBC and CNN and the liberal media calling them out for it. But just because Democrats and the media accept that, it doesn't mean we should. We want to win elections, Alex. We see the consequences right now of losing elections in the Senate when Chuck Schumer is jamming through a $2 trillion giveaway to liberal special interests. And the next up is amnesty. As you mentioned, the DREAM Act is coming down the pipe.
Sure.
The way to stop this woke Democratic agenda is to win elections, and we will win elections with strong, credible conservatives who stand up for America. If our party tolerates conspiracy theories, though, we're only going to lose elections, and America is going to be much worse for it.
So this is very interesting, and it's interesting to watch some of this play out. And again, this is, I'm sure, because I know you check out Breitbart's coverage. Marjorie Taylor Greene has not been a front and center for me, partially because of the stuff you're talking about. It just seems some of the stuff is just so out of left field. I haven't even really dug into the Jewish space laser one, which sounds it's very disturbing, but she certainly indulged some of the 9/11 conspiracy theories out there, and she's certainly indulged this conspiracy that you identify about the Sandy Hook shooting, which is just insane, or I'm sorry, the Parkland shooting, which is just insane that was all a false flag thing, and some of that stuff is unforgivable in a way. And it seems like, though, she's trying to disavow it. So what can be done? Because she's going to be a congressman for the next 2 years. What do you do with that and with this information if you're a Republican?
So, Alex, I think the House Republicans had a long conference meeting last night, not only about her, but about Liz Cheney as well. I'll leave to them how they manage their internal affairs. I will say what the Democrats propose to do to reach into the minority and decide who the minority party is going to put on committees is unprecedented. And if they go down that path, then mark my words, Republicans in 2 years will go down the same path. Should Ilhan Omar, who's made multiple anti-Semitic statements, be sitting on the Foreign Relations Committee? Should Eric Swalwell, cavorting with a Chinese spy, be sitting on the Intelligence Committee? This is a very dangerous precedent that the Democratic majority in the House wants to set when they're on the precipice of losing that majority next year. More broadly, Alex, I would say that, of course, what Democrats and the liberal media want to do is to leverage a fringe of extremist statements and violence from the right against mainstream conservatives in a way that they would never do on the left. I mean, remember, it was a Bernie Sanders supporter who showed up in Alexandria, Virginia, and shot Steve Scalise and almost killed him and tried to commit mass murder against congressional Republicans, and would have done so if it hadn't been for the bravery and quick action of Capitol police officers who were there at that ballpark. When it was discovered that that was a Bernie Sanders supporter, it was out of the news within 24 hours, not something that can be discussed. And frankly, a lot of Republicans didn't discuss it either because he was plainly a crazy person. And there was not an effort by Republicans writ large to leverage that kind of extremist violence or extremist rhetoric from a fringe of the left against mainstream Democratic liberals. We know they're wrong. I don't think many of them are rotten, though. But that's what's happening with MSNBC and CNN and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer right now. And we shouldn't tolerate that either.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm getting a lot of messages on this segment already, Senator, which I'm sure you probably anticipated. And it's interesting because, by the way, a quick correction on my part, she did apparently do the Sandy Hook conspiracy too, which is wild. I'm getting some pushback that the Jewish space laser thing might have been exaggerated by the media. I'm going to look into it. But anyway, the point is I'm with you, Senator, that this is way too far out there for leadership, and it's way too far out there, I think, for our Congress for being productive as a conservative movement. I don't think this is what gets the message across, but it's very important that you point out that the Democrats have people in power that are doing so much damage. And with Ilhan Omar minimizing 9/11, and she's still propped up by our establishment media, Eric Swalwell literally in bed with the Chinese spies, and he's being propped up by our establishment media. And this is where the disconnect is so crazy to me. And the Democrats have covered for so many child predators, it appears. It seems like there's another person every few days that we learn, some powerful person who is a preying on children, who got covered up by Hollywood and the Democrat establishment. And it does take our eye off the ball from some of those actual threats, it appears.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's not just fringe marginal characters in their party. Like Eric Swalwell, who no one had ever heard of until he went on MSNBC and spoke to their tens and tens of viewers every day for 4 years about the Russia collusion hoax.
About Russia,
I mean,
right.
Chuck Schumer literally stood on the steps of the Supreme Court last year, just less than a year ago, and threatened two justices on the Supreme Court about a case that they were hearing that day. Such an extraordinary action that the Chief Justice felt compelled to issue a statement rebuking what Chuck Schumer had done. Look, I've got plenty of arguments from a legal and philosophical perspective with the Supreme Court justices and the way they rule on this or that case. But to stand on the steps of the Supreme Court and to denounce them and say they're going to reap what they sow if they rule a certain way, or look at Maxine Waters. I mean, she basically called for mobs to rally around Trump officials if they were at a restaurant, at a grocery store, at a gas station. And yet she's still the chair of a powerful committee in the House of Representatives. These are not just marginal figures in the Democratic Party. These are the leadership of the Democratic Party.
A perfect example. And then if you want to distill it to conspiracy theories, what's a bigger conspiracy theory than the Russian collusion hoax? And who was worse on it than Maxine Waters? No one. It's really interesting, Senator, because I was...
Well, to be fair to Maxine Waters, both Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff were worse on the Russian collusion hoax than was Maxine Waters. I mean, Adam Schiff went on MSNBC and CNN every day and said, "Oh, the next shoe is going to drop. Very troubling. We have credible evidence established." They had nothing. Not even Bob Mueller's team of partisan Democrats, empowered with a grand jury and subpoena and millions of dollars, very skilled, capable career prosecutors could come up with a shred of evidence of Russian collusion.
And
they wanted to, and they were desperate to, and they claimed that they did, but not even they could do it.
It's unbelievable. I was in a restaurant in D.C. that I'm sure you're familiar with, Senator, on Tuesday, celebrating my sister's birthday, and at the next table was one of a politician well known to everyone in this audience, who's not just one of my least favorite politicians, one of my least favorite Americans. And I couldn't help but think of Maxine Waters the whole time, that if I was Maxine Waters, it would have been my obligation to get up and ruin this person's dinner and to ruin my dinner in the process. And that's the America she wants, as opposed to just letting everyone just eat their food, enjoy their evening, and then move on and, just vote differently down the road and maybe donate differently to different causes. The country country had done for the last couple hundred years, and it's worked out fine to this point. But again, now we have to be so hostile constantly. There's no break. There's no reprieve from our political divides. It has to be a 24/7 obsession for us. And it seems like it's making the country a much hostile place, and one where we're all much less happy.
Yeah, Alex, and Joe Biden and his first 2 weeks in office haven't really helped much. He preached unity from the inaugural stand. He said last year he was going to help heal some of these divides, and obviously the steps he's taken really are just designed to cater to the far left wing of his party and to repeal a bunch of very popular policies that are going to put in motion very harmful effects. You talk about the DREAM Act early. That's legislation that would unleash a massive amnesty and therefore even a greater surge at the border. But we're already starting to see a border surge. I mean, so much so that the Biden administration is starting to tell people, don't come. Now's not the right time. I guess they think there's some time that it's right for illegal aliens to cross into our country. But it's very different from what Joe Biden preached on the inaugural stand.
Yeah, and this is a great segue. So you were kind enough to give us the jump on this story that you've released a DREAM Act analysis, work permits for millions of illegal aliens, and it ignores criminal records. This is all stuff that breaks the rules there, and that should surprise no one. But luckily, you're out there doing the work, trying to expose what's going on. We know Biden is dropping catch and release. I mean, the list of policies that he's putting in place with the stroke of a pen that are radically changing our immigration system are almost too numerous to count already. Speak to us about some of this.
Yeah, so let's be clear what we're talking about when we say the DREAM Act here. This is often portrayed by people like Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Dick Durbin as helping, the tiny Tim Cratchits of the world, the poor chimney sweeps out there who are 7 years old and just trying to get a loaf of bread to survive on. Remember, most of the people that the so-called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program benefited when Obama instituted it were already in their teens. Now, many of these people are in their 20s or even their 30s. About 7 out of 8, in fact, are in their 20s. So these people are in the situation where they arrived here as minors and therefore are illegal immigrants. But we're mostly talking about adults here. We're not talking about little children. But the DREAM Act would go far beyond that program. It would have amnesty for more than 2 million such people. And then here's the kicker, Alex. The main selling point that the Democrats and unfortunately some Republicans use for this proposal is that children shouldn't pay for the sins of the parents. Okay, I understand that. Now, I would say maybe they shouldn't benefit from the sins of the parents either. But how about parents paying for the sins of the parents, right?
Right.
That's the whole point, is that children were brought here. They had no choice. They were minors. They know other country. The parents are the ones that made the choice. And Dick Durbin's DREAM Act would allow those children who are now adults, once they get legal status, to then turn around and get amnesty and citizenship for their parents who violated our laws in the first place and created this situation. As you said, it would also ignore criminal records. I mean, it would exclude multiple criminal convictions at the state and federal level to include serious and violent felonies that have been pleaded down to lower offenses. It would give Alejandro Mayorkas, who we've seen is surrounded by serious ethical questions, the ability to issue waivers, even for people like human traffickers. I mean, the documentation is a joke. It basically allows any two friends of theirs to say, oh, yeah, he's been here for a long time, as opposed to demonstrating with verifiable documents that someone was in the country for all this time. This is why it's far beyond the bill that they propose it as, which is, again, just designed to help the tiny Tim Cratchits of the world, 7-year-olds who are here illegal and just want a chance to grow up as American citizens. It would be a massive and sweeping amnesty, which is really just the tip of the iceberg for what Joe Biden has proposed, which is an amnesty for every illegal alien within the country who came here as recently just a few months ago.
First Charles Dickens reference on the show in a while, so I appreciate that, Senator. So Eddie, I want about
the illegal aliens within the country who came here as recently just a few months ago.
First Charles Dickens reference on the show in a while, so I appreciate that, Senator. So Eddie, I want to bounce something off of you, and I know we got about a minute or two left. We had a story at Breitbart that we broke exclusively from our Cartel Chronicles initiative that Brandon Darby heads up for us, where it was actually cartel smugglers whipping people who were not socially distancing or wearing their mask properly in a caravan coming up to the United States. And I found this so interesting because the cartels are getting their people in line because they want to make sure they can get through. And they think if there's this thought of massive amounts of disease coming up among this group of illegal aliens, then the Biden administration might have their hands tied. They might not allow them into the country. And I found this so disturbing, not just because, corporal punishment being used on these people, and it's all enabled by the United States and our open border, but the fact that the cartels take this so seriously that they're willing to whip people who are their customers, by the way. That's really what they are. They're their customers, because they feel like that this could give away the game and potentially get themselves blocked from this new industry that Joe Biden is opening up to them. It's just 360 so disturbing. I just want to know if you caught this one, or if you kind of see where I'm going with this.
I have not seen that specific story, Alex. I can believe it, though, because the stories of what these cartels and human traffickers have done to the people who have paid them to enter our country illegally are truly horrific. There are a legion of these stories of physical abuse and sexual abuse and kidnapping and ransom. It's all driven by the perception, though, that many of these poor exploited people have, that the border is now open, and the desperation that they have, that they're willing to turn over their loved ones and pay money to drug cartels to get their loved ones into our country. What's compassionate, what we should do is say, no, you're not going to come to America. If you come to our border, you're going to stay in Mexico. You're going to have your claim for asylum adjudicated. You're probably going to lose your claim for asylum because there are not many strong grounds for it. You should not undertake this very dangerous trip and put you and your loved ones at risk of exploitation or even worse.
Senator Tom Cotton, I really appreciate it. Always compelling. And thanks for the scoops, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Alex.
We'll be right back on Breitbart News.